Welcome to Have a Life Teaching, the podcast designed for educators who are dedicated to enhancing their teaching practice and creating a positive impact on their students' lives. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the world of education, exploring a wide range of topics related to curriculum, instruction, and assessment in K-12 schools. Together, we'll learn from the brightest minds in the education field. So if you're a passionate educator who's ready to take your teaching practice to the next level, join us as we explore the exciting world of education. My name is John Shimberry, signing in and saying, let's have a life teaching. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Have a Life Teaching podcast. The goal for our students is to prepare them for college and careers, and giving our students choices and opportunities to decide their path moving forward after K-12. However, the reality is that many of our students are graduating unprepared for both college and careers. And for this reason, I'm really excited to have as my guest today, Johanna Tramantano. Johanna and I actually happen to be former colleagues. We worked at an organization together, so it's always fun to reconnect. And the reason I have Johanna on the show is because she is a career educator and specialist when it comes to that transition between high school and university. She is now a university administrator. She's the host of the Leveraging Literacy podcast because she is a former ELA teacher, and she is known as Professor on Your Side on Instagram. So hopefully many of you have already been following Johanna in her musings online. Johanna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, John. That was quite an introduction, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Happy to talk about what I think is a really important topic. So thank you so much.
Yes, glad to have you. Like I said, this podcast gives me an excuse to talk to old friends.
Love it.
Johanna, why your interest in transitioning high school students to college?
I have both a personal stake in this and a professional one. Having taught in the high school to college space, we're very much in a shifting landscape. We have over 19 million students enrolled in the United States in post-secondary programs, and a little bit of a rebound from pre-pandemic times. So we actually have 5.5% of an increase of students. And so we have a large number of students in post-secondary learning experiences. It's a complicated landscape. In 2023, we know from an ACT college readiness benchmark, only 21% of students met all four of those ACT benchmarks. 40% failed to meet any. And a recent study, the Healthy Mind study from 2024, demonstrated that 77% of our college students reported moderate to serious psychological distress, mental health challenges, difficulty with initiating tasks, regulating emotions, staying organized. So we have students who want to learn, want to do well in school, but need support. And so I think we're at a real crossroads. The other side is I'm a college mom. I was scouring every good deal I could find to buy my son what I thought would be the perfect dorm room. So what I experienced as a mom was that I was spending all this time on the physical needs, which is super important. Looking back, what I also should have done more of was spending more time on executive functioning, walking him through his learning management system, helping him figure all of those other things out. And those are the things that are getting students stuck. I call them little pebbles. What are the pebbles? You know, if you get a pebble in your shoe, it hurts. You can't walk. A tiny little pebble. So what are those pebbles getting in the way that we can support our students with?
Speaking of that, because that's a nice segue, what are those pebbles that are generally getting in the way of students? Because when we talk about executive functioning, that has many components to it. Which components do you find students have a good grasp on, and which of those executive functioning skills our students still need some guidance and support on?
Executive functioning That's a really big term, but if we unpack what that means, we're talking about time management, we're talking about organizational strategies, but I also always add there also needs to be that metacognition because there needs to also be that self-awareness. What does that mean? It can mean that a student looks at their syllabus and not really taking the time to look at all of those different assignments and think, what skills do I need? How much time will I need? What's my timeline? Can I wait till the last minute? Do I need to pace this out? What does this look like if I have multiple jobs? Some of our students have also family responsibilities. Some of our students are commuters. There are layers. We're talking about the complexities that also include the student's personal context. The other piece is, and I actually developed an evidence-based framework that I'm really excited, that's part of this book that I'm really excited to share once it'll be in print because it's designed to support educators at the high school and college level. There are other pieces students struggle with. And it might seem really silly, but communication. And it's a big one. And it means not just communicating one's needs, but also communicating with others, being able to attend office hours and have a conversation with a professor. The number of students that I've spoken to, either in my private practice or in my day job, who are afraid to talk to a professor or don't know what to say. So they don't attend because of that fear. How are we empowering students to advocate for themselves, to communicate their needs? How are we supporting them with navigating technology? That's a big one for me. We make all these assumptions that Gen Alpha, recent generations know about technology, and I argue they are app savvy, but a thing like downloading a Word document, creating files on your desktop or in your drive. It's those little things, how to use an Excel spreadsheet are really important skills as well.
So, given that most of our listeners are K-12 educators, let's break this down. What
Sure.
could high school teachers do to help prepare students for college and career? And does it just have to be high school teachers? Or what can middle school and even elementary school teachers be doing to be infusing college and technical education, college preparedness
Yeah.
into the K-12 curriculum?
That's a really good one. One of the first things is we need to explicitly teach various ways of note taking. We make assumptions when we tell students take notes. We need to teach students that there are different formats. One format may work best for you, but it's really important for them to be aware of all of these different approaches, for them to develop their own way and to understand themselves as learners as well. So that's one piece, and that's every level. Recently, I was in a classroom. I noticed the teacher was doing a little bit more lecturing than as a learner I could handle. And I thought to myself, well, if I were a ninth grader in this class, I'd really be looking out this window or thinking about what's going on in the hallway because I was near the door. I thought to myself, if the teacher had even written the phrase on the board, had me do a quick jot in my notebook about that phrase. It was a science lesson about natural selection. Had me turn and talk with a partner about these terms. Those little things would have been really, really helpful. So I think engagement and then actually teaching those strategies for how to create touchstones for our own learning, I think is really important for our students. The other piece is why do we not spend a little bit more time teaching our students about different approaches to productivity and executive functioning and help them to understand, hey, this is what would work best for me? I don't know that we do that. And I think as students progress in their studies and they have AP exams or Regents exams or more and more complex and rigorous expectations, we need to scaffold that in as well.
Agreed. I think we get caught up, Johanna, on teaching our content. Even in
Yeah.
the year 2025, I still
Yep.
hear many teachers say, well, I got to teach my content. I got to get through the
Sure.
curriculum. And I mean, they do have to teach the curriculum. So I
Yep.
think that's part of the reason why perhaps this teaching of our students about executive functioning isn't as developed or detailed as it perhaps should be. We now see more emphasis on social emotional learning
Yeah.
and getting students to self-reflect
Yeah.
about their learning. So I think the time is now
Yeah.
for perhaps embedding executive functioning as a subset skill within social emotional learning. And like you said, helping our students to know what is the best way that
Yeah.
I could accomplish tasks A, B, and C.
And I argue that those don't have to stand alone, that they can work within the content area and be folded in with intentionality in little steps throughout a student's academic
Got it.
experience.
Let's take that theme for a moment.
Sure.
You said show students or provide exemplars for students of what that process could be.
Hmm.
So, what would be perhaps a good process a high school student should follow, middle school, and maybe an elementary school process where you're almost developing those executive functioning skills by readiness level, if that makes sense?
So at every level, I firmly believe, and I come from the New York City space where I taught over 170 students. So trust me, I know what it's like. If someone's like, but I have a lot of students, I know how difficult it is. I'm not saying you can meet with 150 students every day. That's not realistic. However, I always had a schedule where I would have check-ins with students. And as a part of my check-in with students, I would have students create their own mini goal for each unit where they would write down their own SMART goal, and then we talk about where they were at in the process. I did this from grades 6 through 12, and I've also worked with elementary school teachers doing something very similar where the students can talk about, well, where am I at right now? What am I going to work on? Having opportunities for students to actually share their own goals and develop that metacognition in relation to what they're learning is really important. As students progress, when they're in elementary school, we may provide them with those checklists for executive functioning. Did you, when you write your essay, make sure you indented and have finger spaces and check punctuation, all the things? As students progress, do we offer the students opportunities to create their own checklists and their own next steps? And I don't know that we do that. And in doing so, we're really giving the students an opportunity to build that self-efficacy that they're going to need as they progress into college. And that doesn't require all that much work on the part of the teacher because the student is doing a little bit of the heavy lifting. It may require modeling from the teacher and maybe some scaffolded support with the student. But we want the student eventually to say, well, I really need to work on the organization. Well, okay, well, what do you need in order for the organization to come in play in this essay? And then talking the student through what they're going to do next. Do we need to go back to the outline? Did you underline the topic sentence of each paragraph? Is it clear to the reader? And so as you're doing that, instead of telling the students, have the students do a little bit more of the ownership in that sense. And I think that could take things really far because I asked my students, what's your next step in college?
And you're also talking to the power of rubrics, giving
Yeah,
students rubrics or having them develop rubrics
correct.
around what is a well-developed example of whatever
Mhm.
proficient, developing, and emerging. One task I love working on with teachers is whatever they want their students to produce, if they could even take old examples from, say, previous years. So they
Yeah,
want students to be writing a compare and contrast essay. Have those old examples from
exemplars. Yep,
exactly from
yep,
other classes, have an emerging example, a developing, a proficient, and a well-developed,
yeah.
and then engage your students in an activity around which is which and why. That helps produce that rubric. And then to what you're talking about, Johanna, as they're working on whatever it is they're working on, then using that rubric to be evaluating their own work and what their next steps are. Have you done anything like that with the students that you've had, whether as a college administrator, teacher, or as a K-12 teacher?
Yes, and there's research behind students using rubrics and peer evaluation. Shout out to Dr. Heidi Andrade, who's done really great work about that. Anything that I suggest, please know there's going to be some research behind it. I have definitely co-created rubrics with my students as a teacher, and it helps them to understand the process. And it really gives us a chance to laser in on what are those categories and what do those gradations look like. Even did it for behavior with my eighth graders. And my favorite part was, I'm still laugh to this day, boy, were they honest about self-assessing themselves on their behavior. So, it's really helpful because it opens up the conversation for us to talk about, well, where are we now and where are we headed? In the college space, the rubrics most likely are there from another professor, but we also need to unpack it and not make that assumption that everyone understands what that rubric means. And it's not just a grade. So again, that goes back to the communication piece. How are we communicating? And this is a big thing that I thread throughout my book. It's how are we communicating the why throughout all of our lessons, the why and the what and the how. How will what we're learning today in eighth grade help us next year, the year after, and beyond? How do these skills build? And what do they mean? Ensuring that we're focused on the meaning behind the assignment and not just a number grade. And often our students get locked into that number. Is true learning really happening there if they're just focused on the number, or if we're really talking about what they're working on, what they've grown in? That metacognition is really important also for them to reflect on where they were at the beginning of the semester, where they ended up. I always have my students self-assess themselves on key learnings, things that they're going to take with them, but also things they want to continue to work on, especially in the composition classroom. We know that writing is a process.
That's apparent because even in the example you gave before, you align the concept of executive functioning with student writing. To your point about how, why, where are we going to need this, knowing how to communicate in writing, in a presentation. I've had a guest on talking about how students in college should be giving presentations and what high school educators could be doing to rev up the way they do presentations in high school to get them more prepared for college.
That's in my book too.
Awesome. Awesome. So the fact that you are focusing on writing as a form of communication is an executive skill that students can use in any area of life.
Exactly.
Now, in all your work, when you work with educators who are excited about preparing or developing students' executive functioning skills, where do you find, again, I know I'm talking more on the K-12 level than the university.
Good.
When people stumble, where do they stumble and what's the solution for that? I'm talking more the educators.
Look at it more from a structural standpoint. At the university level, a lot of colleges have amazing adjuncts, but with adjuncts, we have people from all over. So it can be really hard to bring us all together so that we're all on the same page and doing similar practices. The nature of the university space can be challenging for implementing any new systems or approaches in and of itself. I also see sometimes the case is that a professor at the college level is a content specialist. They may know their history or their mathematics, but the pedagogy. And so how are we communicating the why of our lesson, supporting student engagement, giving students opportunities for communication, collaboration, all of those things with intentionality could be a little bit of a challenge. And that's where I hope my book will fill a little bit of a gap to support instructors at the high school and college level. For high school teachers, having been one, if you're not putting out a fire or dealing with an issue or 5 issues and you have to run to proctor an exam and then you've got this and you've got that. I know what it's like. I know as a teacher, administrator, you name it. Time is always a challenge at the K-12 space, and also managing multiple responsibilities at the same time. With my book, I created a framework, CONNECT. The C stands for communication, O for organization, N for networking, the other N for navigating technology, E for engagement, C for collaboration, and that last one is transition. There is method to my madness. My hope is that maybe we're not implementing the whole framework. Let's take a letter. Let's start somewhere today or next week and take it from there. I'm a big fan of learning by doing, Brick et al. Let's just try something, see how it goes, reevaluate, and move forward.
What I like about what you're saying and what's resonating with me, because I hear you and I agree, teachers are, whether university or, like I said, in the case of our listeners, mostly K-12 educators, are all over the place doing lots of different things. So using a framework like Connect can help our educators structure how they are going to be developing their students' executive functioning skills. And I coach teachers around this myself. One
Yeah,
way to do it could be, and like you said, start somewhere and start simple.
yeah,
You go over the learning intention in the beginning of the class. You have a student read it. You have students turn and talk about that learning intention. What words
that's
do you
right.
already know?
You
Where
got it,
have we
John.
seen? Well, you're not the only one that's been in that classroom a long
You're
time.
going to
In
coach
fact,
with me, John.
you and I have been in some of the same classrooms at the same time.
We
So,
sure have.
and then cold calling a student or two. What do
Yeah,
you know about this learning objective? And doing that as a regular process. Then at the end of the lesson, as an exit activity, let's revisit the learning intention.
that's it.
Did you meet it? Did you meet our
Yeah,
success criteria? What was our success criteria?
that's right.
Maybe you go over that at the beginning of the class. And then at the end of the class, ask students to provide evidence
That's
around
right.
where they met the learning intention, what evidence supports that, and what are their next steps.
You
Even,
got it.
even if our educators listening to this podcast do
Yeah.
that one thing, it could be revolutionary in terms of helping our students develop their self-efficacy.
Thank you. That made my day. My book does have sample lesson plans, but I am a firm believer. I think we talked about this before we even started recording. I'm a firm believer in giving. And I'm actually working on a module of resources that are aligned to my framework that I'd like to post on my website eventually. That is my purpose, is to support teachers in providing materials and resources that are aligned and free.
Love free. Johanna, what have we not talked about that you want our listeners to know?
I don't want to speak for you, John, but as a seasoned educator, I know and see how hard educators work and that their work is valued and that I see that they need tools, strategies, and supports for our currently evolving students' needs. Students have greater needs than even before. I think they live in a very complex world that's evolving even more rapidly than we could have ever imagined, with AI, with a changing job market, with economic challenges, worldwide crises. We're in a very tenuous time, and I think we all need to work together. I'm looking forward to supporting educators in the best way that I can, because our students have a range of needs and we need to give them a range of tools to support.
Indeed, you gave some good tools that folks can use right away.
Thank you.
Hopefully, when your book comes out, people will pick up that book. Before the book comes out, where can folks find out more information about you or connect with you for your great insight if they want to reach out?
Thank you so much. I have a website, leveragingliteracy.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Professor on Your Side. Those are two ways to find out a little bit more. I have free resources already on my website, and I'll send you the link, John, so you can post everything in the show notes. I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope listeners find this helpful.
Well, I hope they find it helpful too. But like I said, Johanna, it's always nice to reconnect. Even if no one finds it helpful, it's been fun chatting with you again. Thanks, Johanna. This has been a very productive conversation, an important one. We need that transition to be smoother than it currently is. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening today. I hope you got some great tips that you can bring back into your teaching. Remember, have a life teaching without sacrificing your own. Also, don't forget to subscribe and be well.